we go.
There we go.
Okay.
And next slide. There we are. Typically, not an election year, the governor and legislator has put Proposition 50 on the ballot. It authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting. So the question is, should the state authorize temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting? So first, I'd like to say a little bit about the League before we get started. As you may know, the mission of the League of Women Voters is to encourage informed and active participation in government and increase understanding of major public policy issues. For example, we organize and moderate candidate forums, we register voters, and we provide informational talks about issues on the ballot, which is what we're doing here this evening. We're proudly nonpartisan. We neither support nor oppose candidates or political parties at any level of government. But we do work on issues of concern to our members and to the public, and our advocacy arm does take positions on these issues. However, we are here today as representatives of the educational arm of the League, and so we are presenting the information on the proposition and will show both the arguments for and against. Next slide. So we call these presentations pros and cons. We present unbiased, nonpartisan explanations of ballot measures to help voters make informed decisions. We do not advocate for or against the measures. We simply explain what the situation is, some background to the issue, what the measure would do if passed, what a yes or no vote means, who supports or opposes it and why, and the fiscal and practical impacts. And now Gail Hart with the North Central San Mateo County League will take over.
Hello. What are congressional districts? Parts of a state where people vote for someone to represent them in the U.S. House of Representatives. There are 435 congressional districts in the United States, and California has 52 of that total. A congressperson represents the people from their district in Washington, D.C. They help develop the federal budget and U.S. policy priorities and work with other U.S. representatives to make new laws. Each representative is elected for a 2-year term. Now, this obviously does not affect the senators who are elected for a 6-year term. Next slide, please. Prior to 2008, legislators drew lines, or the court did it if the legislature failed to carry out this duty properly. In 2008, voters approved the Voters First Act, We Draw the Lines, which was Proposition 11, which established a nonpartisan commission to draw the maps for state Senate, state Assembly, and the Board of Equalization. In 2010, Proposition 20 was approved, and this added a commission to draw the federal congressional maps. That proposition was sponsored by Charles Munger, whose name we will see later. He is the main source of funds for the No on Prop 50 campaign. The 14-member commission is made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 not affiliated with either of those 2 parties. The commission is not allowed to draw districts that favor a candidate or a political party, and it must listen to and use public input from communities about which neighborhoods should be kept together. The selection process is designed to produce a commission that is independent from legislative influence and reasonably representative of the state's diversity. This is Article 21 of the state constitution. How do other states draw congressional maps? In most states, the state legislatures draw congressional district maps with or without the help of advisory committees. The remaining states, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, New York, and Washington, all draw both state and federal districts using an independent commission. They have regulations that limit direct participation by elected officials on these commissions. And just as a side note, Alaska currently has only one congressional representative, so they only have one district in that entire state. Each state other than Colorado and New York also bans commissioners from running for office in the districts they draw, at least for a few years. When are the lines redrawn? Every 10 years after the US Census is completed, states draw new congressional district maps to reflect their allotted number of representatives and to rebalance the numbers of people in each district so that the districts have roughly equivalent populations. This process is called redistricting. As mentioned before, each state decides what process to use to draw new district maps, but when drawing new maps, each state must follow federal laws. For example, each congressional district in the state must represent about the same number of people. However, the US Supreme Court in 2019 ruled the Constitution does not prohibit partisan gerrymandering to increase a party's clout. They do prohibit gerrymandering when it's explicitly done by race.
Okay, so to return to the question at hand, because of developments happening in other states, California's legislature and governor have passed legislation to allow midterm redistricting by the legislature. This requires voter approval because, as Gail just explained, in 2010, California voters put the California Citizens Redistricting Commission into our state constitution. So a constitutional amendment is required in order for these new maps to be drawn. And a constitutional amendment always requires voter approval. So again, the question is, should the state authorize temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting? So a little background. In June and July 2025, President Trump asked Texas state legislators to redraw their congressional maps to improve Republicans' ability to win 5 districts now held by Democrats. In August 2025, the Texas legislature did that. They passed a bill to adopt new maps for the 2026 elections. So in California, a plan to counterbalance that action was initiated by members of the legislature and Governor Newsom. And on August 18th, 2025, new congressional maps were approved by the state legislature. That was Assembly Bill 604. But the bill cannot take effect without voter approval because it's a constitutional amendment. So Proposition 50 is a special election in November. Next slide. So what exactly will Prop 50 do? It would change the California Constitution to allow new maps approved by the state legislature in AB 604 to take effect and replace maps drawn by the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. The new maps would be used in any congressional election through 2030, including those in 2026, 2028, and 2030. After the 2030 census, the commission would return to drawing district lines using the rules set out by the previous redistricting law. This proposition retains California's Citizen Redistricting Commission, and it supports the use of fair, nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So please note that all of the other state maps, the state Senate, Assembly, and other districts will remain the same. This only affects the congressional districts. Next slide. Prop 50 would change the percentage of registered Republicans and Democrats in 10 districts so that 5 districts would go from a majority of Republican voters to a majority of Democratic voters, and 5 districts, which have Democratic representatives, but by a slim margin, would get a slightly larger number of registered Democrats. So, for example, District 49, represented by Mike Levin, a Democrat, and the new map would give him a slightly larger percentage of registered Democrats, so his seat would be safer. Next slide. The California Legislative Analyst's Office, the LAO, projects the fiscal effects. They say that one-time costs to counties of up to a few $1 million to update election materials to reflect new congressional district maps, and also one-time costs to the state of $200,000. The Legislative Analyst's Office does not include special election costs in its analysis. The LAO only analyzes the fiscal impact of the measure if passed. So this special election is estimated to cost over $200 million. Back to Gail.
The league would like to let you know about how these pros and con arguments are compiled. They come from supporters and opponents as published in the official voter information guide. The league cannot vouch for their accuracy. They do not represent our viewpoint necessarily, and they reflect their supporters and opponents' opinions and may not be based in fact. Next slide, please. Now, the supporters say the Election Rigging Response Act is a temporary emergency plan needed to stop President Trump's attempt to unfairly rig the 2026 election. It gives voters the ability to approve the district lines in this election. It creates fair maps that reflect California's diverse communities and protect us from partisan gerrymandering. It keeps California a leader in fair elections by preserving its independent redistricting system, and it strengthens democracy by making sure Republicans don't have an unfair advantage in Congress. Next slide. And the opponents say is a power grab by politicians undoing fair election reforms and returning to gerrymandered districts that benefit politicians over voters. It replaces an open public process with secretive political backroom deals. It hurts fair representation by dividing neighborhoods and weakening minority voices. It lets politicians control district lines for years and could open the door to permanent control. And it costs taxpayers $200 million when the state is cutting funding to important programs because of budget problems. The funds raised as of September 28th, 2026. This slide shows the top 5 donors of each side over $1 million. This is one of the most expensive ballot propositions. The yes side has a diverse group of unions, PACs, private donors, and no is funded by Charles Munger Jr., who was one of the main forces getting Prop 11 and 20 on the ballot. Also, unitemized contributions right now on the yes side equal 36.6 million from the House Majority PAC for Prop 50, although this is not listed. Lisa?
And I'd just like to repeat, please type in your questions in the Q&A, should be at the bottom. Type in the questions, and after this presentation, we will address all of them. Thank you. So here's a look at the current and proposed congressional districts. You can see most districts experience some change in their district lines. But as we talked about, only 10 districts will actually be impacted by this proposition. Those, as you can see, are primarily in the north and the south. Now let's take a look at the 2 districts in our county. So San Mateo County's Congressional District 15, you can see we will have no change at all. And looking at District 16, the changes are very small. There's a tiny area below San Jose that changes districts, and that's it. So to recap, what does your vote mean? A yes vote on Prop 50 means the state would use new legislatively drawn congressional district maps starting in 2026. California's new maps would be used until the California Citizens Redistricting Commission draws new maps following the 2030 US Census. And a no vote on this measure means current congressional district maps drawn by the California Citizens Redistricting Commission would continue to be used in California until the commission draws new maps following the 2030 US Census.
Okay, we want to remind you of some important dates that are coming up. Obviously, October 6th and 7th have passed, but the ballots were mailed to all registered voters and early voting sites opened on October 6th. On October 7th, the ballot drop-off locations opened. On October 20th, voting registration, that's the voting registration deadline for non-provisional ballots. After this, until Election Day, people can register, but they will receive a provisional ballot. October 25th, voter centers open for early in-person voting, and November 4th, which is Election Day. All votes must be cast, or mailed ballots must be postmarked by this date. So we wanted to show you some very useful resources if you still have questions that haven't been answered. Vote 411 is an extensive, comprehensive information website that is sponsored by the League for you to receive information on not only Prop 50, but other elections that will be coming up. That is vote411.org. And to register to vote, that's at smcvote.org. And the one that's called Where's My Ballot is really a great one to keep track of your ballot. California.ballottracks.net allows you to see when they've received your ballot and when the ballot has been counted. It's very reassuring in my point of view. Thank you for listening to us. And we'd also like to thank these organizations who helped promote this presentation. The ACLU San Mateo County Chapter, Bellhaven Empowered, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the San Francisco Peninsula Chapter, and Thrive Alliance. Now, the recording of this webinar and the presentation slides will be available on our website soon. And at the bottom, you can see the websites for the League of Women Voters of North and Central San Mateo County and the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County. So thank you again. The League is, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. And we'd love for all of you to join us. Margie, do we have any questions?
Hang on. Does the League have any connection to Charles Munger Jr., who has contributed significant funds on this issue?
No.
I don't believe he's a League member.
No.
Is there any alternative to proposition to doing this in response to Texas doing their redistricting?
Well,
Yeah.
none that I can think of. It's tit for tat. They're going to give more of their Republican representatives a chance. And so we're giving more of our Democratic representatives a chance.
And at this point, I believe Proposition 50 is the most timely of alternatives. I'm not sure that anything going forward would be in time for the 2026 election.
Although other states are doing similar things,
Mhm.
both Republican and Democrat.
Thank you. And then we do have a question about the League's position on Prop 50. And why the League has not come out with a position for or in particular against.
Well, the League is neutral on this, and I believe that the reason they're neutral is because although the League is political, it is nonpartisan. And I think the League felt that if it came out in favor or against, it would indicate a partisan position.
And officially, the League of Women Voters of California has no position on Proposition 50.
Mhm.
That is their statement.
And I will add, you can read the full statement about the League's position at LWVC, League of Women Voters California.org/Prop 50. The entire the entire, that explains more fully the league's no position on Prop 50. We have another question about Charles Munger and why has he given so much money in opposition? And about other organizations opposing the measure. We showed that slide. If one of the presenters has the slide handy, they could recap who is in opposition, what groups. Gail, I think you had that slide.
Pull it up. I believe Charles Munger was one of the very few. I think there were only a couple that we had listed at the time that these slides were made. So
I've got the slide up, and so as I understand it, Charles Munger was a big funder of the Independent Commission. So he sort of, it makes sense that he would want to keep that. The other contributor listed on the slide is the Congressional Leadership Fund. Do we know anything about that organization?
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't. I'm assuming it's a PAC, Political Action Committee.
Yes, the Congressional Leadership Fund is a group that works to elect Republicans to Congress. It's kicked in $5 million to this proposition, no.
Okay, and then
The slide lists 41 million, but maybe that's just a timing issue.
I also want to note we're only taking questions in written form. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. And I have one other question at the moment, and it's the ballot limits of Proposition 50 was in reaction to Texas. Missouri has increased it increased Republican representation by 1 seat, and there are some other states potentially in play that may do mid-year redistricting. I guess the question is, does Prop 50 do anything about other states?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I've read that also, besides Missouri, Ohio, and Utah are also forcing new maps.
Right, we're considering them at least.
And I'm sure there will be more as time becomes closer.
Yeah.
Potentially. I don't have any other. Oh, here comes another. Yes, someone chimed in that the earlier question about who is in support or against might refer to the slides that were earlier. So Gail, in your the 2 slides you present of what supporters say and what opponents say, those list some of the people who support and oppose Prop 50. So perhaps we could recap the people who oppose Prop 50.
I will see if I can find it.
I have that slide up.
Okay.
And the opponents of Prop 50 listed on that slide are Charles Munger, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kevin McCarthy, Carl DeMaio, the California Business Roundtable, the Congressional Leadership Fund, and the Republican Party of California. So the 2 listed as the big funders were the Congressional Leadership Fund, a PAC, and Charles Munger. The ones that are listed as being for Prop 50 are Barack Obama, Gavin Newsom, California Professional Firefighters, the California Federation of Teachers, SEIU California State Council, Indivisible California, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, and the California Democratic Party.
Okay. I think I have another, I think it's a comment about the new district lines. The map map of the new district lines is presented in the Prop 50 booklet, so voters can see it. Yeah, so I think there was a comment in my questions about backroom deals, and this person is commenting that there really is not a backroom deal, in that the maps that the legislature drew are in the voter guides. And again, we're addressing questions in the Q&A. Are we unique as a state in having independent commission designate congressional maps? Why couldn't the independent commission that currently exists redraw the maps? I assume for this proposition. Well, wouldn't. So I'll read the question as stated, as written. Are we unique as a state in having independent commission designate congressional maps? And why couldn't the independent commission weigh in on these maps? Gail, I think you covered what if California is unique in having independent commissions for congressional maps.
Actually, we're not. There are a number of states who have the draw the maps with the advice of commission. It varies by how effective or how influential the commissions are, because sometimes it's the legislature that will listen to a commission. But in California and in other states, the commission is the one who draws the lines. And at this point, the law reads that, I believe, that the commission does it at the end of every census, every 10 years. So this is, the commission wouldn't be there wouldn't be a commission at this point, because they're only chosen for after the next census, which would be in 2030. Does that explain?
And also the commission is made up of 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and I thought it was 5 independents, but something else said 4 independents. So it's an equal body. So neither the Democrats or the Republicans would be okay with gerrymandering the districts to favor one party over another. Utah also has a independent redistricting commission, but their legislators threw out their new maps, and a judge is forcing them to come up with new maps again, because they threw out their independent redistricting commission maps, came up with their own. So lots of shenanigans.
Going on there. I have another question. Is there anything that prevents the politicians from moving in and making these districts permanent?
Well, the proposition is written, the law is written that it will terminate in 2030. And the commission will then be redrawing the districts after the 2030 census. So that would be in 2031. So the law is kills itself in 2030.
Thank you. At the moment, I don't have any further questions. Maybe we'll give it just a couple more seconds to see if we get a couple more. But I think not, so I am going to start our conclusion. This concludes our Proposition 50 pros and cons presentation and Q&A. I want to thank my league colleagues for their time and effort to produce this event. I also want to thank you, the participants, our audience, for participating and asking great questions. The recording will be up in a day or two, and we would love for you to share a link to the recording with your friends and social networks. You will find the recording on our websites of the League of Women Voters of North and Central San Mateo County and the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County. And if you don't know our URLs off the top of your head and search for our leagues, I urge you to search for our leagues specifically, North and Central San Mateo County and South San Mateo County, because otherwise you'll get the National League site or the California State League site, and they won't have the reporting of this presentation. And our sites will. So, so those are the things to search for. Again, we thank you very much for your attention and participation and great questions and wanting to be educated on this issue. And with that, I will say good night and be sure to vote. Thank you.